Transportation, Infrastructure, and Public Safety will come to order. Ben, call the roll.
Senators Fitzwater,
Here.
Brown, Bean,
Here.
Eigel,
Here.
Razer, Schroer,
Here.
Williams.
Quorum being established. We are in committee. All right, we're going to go into executive session since we have quorum here. We're going to take up a couple bills. Do I have a second on executive session? Have a second. We're now in executive or everybody in favor of going to executive session say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. We're in executive session. We're going to go through some of the bills we've done the last several weeks. Most of them are pretty non-controversial. We're going to do Senator LuetKemeyer's, I guess we'll start with Ratback. So I move that Senate Bill 264 be brought before the committee. Do I have a second? I have a second. And I move that Senate Bill 264 be voted out of committee. Do pass. Do I have a second? I have a second. This is a Ratback program. Senator Bean, I don't know if you want to speak to it, but you're welcome to if anybody has any questions on the bill. We've passed this a number of times over the last several years, so it's pretty non-controversial. Seeing no discussion, Ben, call the roll.
Senators Fitzwater,
Aye.
Brown, Bean,
Aye.
Eigel,
Aye.
Razer, Schroer, Williams.
By your vote of 5-0, you voted do pass Senate Bill 264. I now move that Senate Bill 317 be brought before the committee. Do I have a second? I have a second. Senator Eigel has a substitute. Senator, do you want to propose that and we'll talk about it? And everybody should have a copy of this. We brought copies down, so everybody should have them in front of you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The substitute I'm offering strips out the provisions having to do with future revenue mechanisms and just creates, it would just restore the bill back to a level where it's just creating the fund that the legislature could choose to put money into in the future if it wants to fund a project having to do with I-70. So it takes out any provisions that would tie the hands of future revenue, so it's just the fund.
Any questions on the substitute for Senate Bill 317? So I move that we adopt Senate committee substitute for Senate Bill 317. Second. I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. You have adopted the substitute, Senate committee substitute. I now move that we do pass Senate committee substitute for Senate Bill 317. Do I have any discussion on that? Having a second, any discussion? Seeing none, Ben, call the roll.
Senators Fitzwater,
Aye.
Brown, Bean,
Aye.
Eigel,
Aye.
Razer, Schroer,
Aye.
Williams.
By your vote of 5-0, you voted do pass Senate committee substitute for Senate Bill 317. I now move that Senate Bill 191 be brought before the committee. Do I have a second?
Second.
Having a second, I move that Senate Bill 191 be voted out of committee. Do pass. Do I have a second? A second on that. This is a bill we heard last week from Senator LuetKemeyer that deals with cost estimates for MoDOT, just having a transparent website for those projects. Any discussion on the bill? Hearing none, Ben, call the roll.
Senators Fitzwater,
Aye.
Brown, Bean, Eigel,
Aye.
Razer, Schroer,
Aye.
Williams.
By your vote of 5-0, you voted do pass Senate Bill 191. We've considered the platooning bill. I'm gonna go to that, and we're gonna vote on that as soon as we get back from spring break. So just be prepared for that. I have a couple more questions I just want to kind of work through, but we will just be prepared for that as soon as we get back because I think that's an important technology that we move forward. I just want to. I just feel like I need some more clarity, and it's been kind of a crazy week or so. So. We're going to come back to that, but be prepared to vote for that when we come back from spring break. And with that, we'll go out of executive session. Do I need a second for that? I got a second. We got a second. So we're out of executive session. We're going to go into our hearing now on Senate bills. We'll start with Senator Schroer, and you can just if you want to start with whichever one you want to start with, and then we'll go to the other one after you're finished. So Senate Bill 224 or Senate Bill 225.
I think those are bagpipes out there, which hopefully they can play after I present this bill. For the record, Nick Schroer presenting Senate Bill 224. This is identical language that has passed out of both chambers in the past couple of years, dealing with concealed carry on public transit. As we've seen before, whether it was from Representative Schnelting or former Senator Onder, this has been a bill that will take away the prohibition on lawful concealed carry of your Second Amendment on public transit. I've got a stack of articles upstairs showing that despite the fact that this has been prohibited in law for quite some time, the criminals are not abiding by the law. The criminals are not considering that there is a prohibition right now on public transit carrying firearms, most of which are not legally owned by them. So this would allow lawful concealed carry card holders to protect themselves on public transit. And with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you, Senator. Is there any questions for the bill sponsor? Senator Bean?
Just to clarify, you do have to have a concealed carry permit, correct?
Correct.
That's one.
Further questions for the bill sponsor? Seeing none. How many do we have that would like to testify in favor of the bill? Okay. And how many opposed? All right. Let's do in favor first. Please come forward if you'd like to testify in favor of the bill. There's no special order. Come on up. There we go.
I have no shame.
There we go. There's pride of being first. Life is good.
The fact that being a father should remove all sense of dignity from you.
Please state your name, where you're from, and the floor is yours for 3 minutes.
My name is Carl Smart. I am the Vice President, of Western Missouri Shooters Alliance. And I speak for both myself and our group that we are very strongly in support of this. Now I'd like to make basically 3 quick points. First off, in years past, it's been alleged that there is a federal prohibition of allowing firearms on public transportation. And every year, a member of either the House or the Senate committee has read that bill in, or read that document into the record, that there is a specific call out allowing the state to do this. So any other claims are demonstrably false. And last year, Scott Jones with National Rifle Association testified that he had gone through all the documentation he could possibly find, and there is no prohibition. So any claims otherwise are false. Second point, you may not have realized it, but we have record levels of default and arrears in car loans. People are losing their cars at record levels because of the economy. And what that does is it throws more and more people onto public transportation. And the problem may not be on the transportation, but the trip from your home to the bus stop, from the bus stop to your place of business and return is where you're most vulnerable. And it throws more and more people into that vulnerability. And it's happening every day, more people. Third quick point, this bill passed out of the House last year with overwhelming support. It passed out of the Senate committees, made it to the Senate calendar on the last day, and they shut the Senate down one day early, and our bill died. Something that has galled me for a year. Anyway, enough of me. Next. Thank you, everyone.
Any questions for this witness?
Oh, any questions?
Hearing none. Thank you for your testimony. Anybody else here to testify in support of Senate Bill 224? Please make sure you fill out a witness form for our records and proceed when you're ready.
Does it matter which one I use? Got it. Sure. Testing. My name is William Bland. I live in Liberty, Missouri, and I am on the board of the Western Missouri Shooters Alliance. No one is paying me to be here today. I am here on behalf of the Alliance and myself. I and the Alliance strongly support this bill and feel it is long overdue to be enacted into law to protect some of our most vulnerable citizens. Current law prevents law-abiding citizens from exercising their Second Amendment rights between their homes and a public conveyance and between the conveyance and their home. This is especially dangerous late at night. Concealed carry permit holders are not the problem. They are among the most law-abiding of anyone. In fact, I have documentation that police officers are 6 times more likely to commit a crime using a firearm than a concealed carry permit holder. We have been fingerprinted, we have been photographed, we have been investigated and vetted. We have to demonstrate competency with a firearm. I have been testifying for this measure both in the House and in the Senate for several years now. Some of the testimony that I've heard against simply doesn't add up. I have heard testimony that the presence of a concealed carry permit holder would unduly alarm many passengers and they would abandon public transportation. Although it was not explained how passengers would be aware that a concealed weapon was present. And it is curious to me that these same passengers are not alarmed to the point of abandonment by criminal elements carrying illegal firearms. Some of the other testimony I've heard a representative from the Kansas City Council testify that against this bill. Now, it is instructive to note that this same council is consistently opposed to any gun rights legislation. They are so opposed that they knowingly passed an ordinance that is in direct violation of Missouri's preemption law. I've heard a representative from ATA testify that the buses are safe because there are security offices on some of the buses. This is merely an advertisement as to which buses are most vulnerable. That's all I have.
Thank you for testimony. Questions for this witness? Hearing none. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Anybody else here to testify in support of Senate Bill 224?
What do I do with this?
Just leave the witness forms right there on the table. We'll get them.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman and Committee. Thank you. My name is Jenny Oliveira. I'm out of District 28, and I am a concealed carrier. Excuse me. There are 2 tools I carry with me on a daily basis. My firearm. As a mother, I protect myself and my family. I also carry with me a CPR mask because as a mother, that is the #1 protector when you have children. I would give up neither one for me to go out in public and ride on public transportation, much less, as these prior gentlemen stated, go to and from public transportation and be completely vulnerable. The fact that I am on public transportation or in a grocery store or in my own home literally makes no difference. You're disarming someone who has the right to have arms for an entire day, possibly. Their time, but once they leave that front door, makes them completely at the arms of the bad guy. We need to take that away from them. As the senator has stated, these gentlemen and women do not care about the laws. They no longer follow those laws than they do anything else in their lives. They are criminals for a reason. They respect nothing. Those of us who conceal carry have respect for life. We have respect for protecting our friends and family. We have respect for the law. We need to be able to exercise those rights, just as any person has the right to do anything else, including breathing air or drinking water. And that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for testimony. Any questions for this witness? Hearing none. Thank you for your time. Anybody else here to testify in support? Proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Susan Myers of the 20th. As a woman who conceal carries and volunteers my time to help educate and train other women in the use of firearms, I have to tell you, I find the concept of gun-free zones to be repugnant. You disarm us in the name of imaginary safety, leaving us without adequate means of self-defense should we face a threat. A threat, mind you, that does not and will not obey any law you might conceive and subject the rest of us to. Every time a woman has to take public transit, this restrictive policy forces them to be unarmed, not just while on that bus or train, but throughout her entire day. Are you picking up on a theme here? This is wrong, and this ban, along with many others, needs to be lifted. 31% of gun owners, or approximately 25.3 million adult Americans, have used a firearm in self-defense. Of those, 81.9% did not have to pull the trigger. Only 18.1% fired their gun. For 50.9%, showing the gun ended the threat. And for nearly a third, 31%, the would-be victim simply telling them they had a gun kept them safe. So from this, we can deduce that gun owners are not a bunch of quick-tempered numbskulls to be feared if allowed to exercise their right to carry for self-defense, even on buses and trains. With the Supreme Court's Bruin decision last June, we were reminded that many of these sensitive places' carry bans will likely not withstand the text and history tests they need to pass in order not to be found in violation of our Second Amendment. It is my hope that both chambers of this legislative body will finally see the time as right and get out in front of an eventual SCOTUS ruling on gun-free zones. There will be arguments put forth today in strenuous opposition to this bill. Let me remind the committee and everyone testifying that interest balancing was undertaken by our founders, who then proceeded to include the Second Amendment as written. As such, interest balancing of perceived public safety concerns outweighing the right of an individual is no longer an allowable excuse to infringe upon our inalienable rights. So let me bring it back to why I'm here. 27% of female firearms owners have used a firearm in self-defense. We are not defenseless females, except that is when you disarm us. Thank you.
Thank you for testimony. Any questions for this witness? Hearing none, thank you. Anybody else here to testify in favor of Senate Bill 224? Anybody here to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 224?
Thank you, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Mike Winter, I represent the Missouri Public Transit Association. We're the statewide organization that represents transit providers from all parts of the state, both large and small, and our board has consistently opposed provisions such as Senate Bill 224 to repeal the prohibition on allowing weapons on transit. You know, make no mistake that safety is one of the primary concerns and things that we strive for every day as we drive our riders around the state, whether it be to work, to doctor appointments, see them on buses or trains going to wherever they want to go. We don't feel that allowing or passage of a bill like this is going to do anything to really establish more safety granted, the people who are here today may feel safer themselves if they ride transit by carrying their firearms, but I don't think that it's going to markedly change how things operate, and we're not aware of any study that would prove that. You know, keep in mind that allowing weapons on either buses or trains are effectively allowing them in very close quarters and confined areas. I would suggest that if something were to happen where this were to pass and weapons were drawn in those high-stress situations, concealed carry permit owners may not be suitable to engage in those activities, given that it is a high-stress, confined area. You know, the people that are trained in the field of law enforcement and military training obviously have those kind of requirements and know how to handle those situations. But just because you've got a concealed carry permit does not necessarily provide you the training to be able to handle those type of situations. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I think MPTA has submitted some written testimony, and I can follow up with the committee following the hearing on any of those questions you may have.
Any questions for the witness? Thank you for your testimony.
Thanks.
Anybody else here to testify in opposition?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Fred Dreiling today representing the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority and City Utilities of Springfield, who run the bus system down there. And we would like to go on record in opposition to Senate Bill 224. As Mr. Winter says, the bus is kind of a unique place. It's closed quarters. It's driving down Main Street. There's lots of people on either side, and we just think that the guns on bus proposition is a loser for us. I think the biggest thing that drives it is we've had 11 million riders last year. We had 16 incidents, 4 of those involved guns. The biggest thing that we look at is our riders are going to work, to school, to the hospital, to sporting events. None of those places allow conceal and carry, so that creates another problem in and of itself. But I know I'm not going to change any hearts and minds with my testimony, and so with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Anybody else in opposition?
Mr. Chairman, Shannon Cooper today representing the City of Kansas City as well as the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce, and I think you all have heard my testimony in the past. We just go on record in opposition of the bill. One thing I might note today that I haven't seen folks from Kansas City that use this transportation daily ever come here and testify on why they need this, and I think that speaks volumes. I know we all view things different from our perspectives, but in our community, this is not a popular idea. Our city council members are not overran with requests for this type of legislation to be put into place, and therefore we oppose it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for this witness? Hearing none.
Thank you.
Further opposition?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. David Jackson, registered lobbyist for Greater St. Louis, Inc. I don't want to echo anything that's already been said. We're just concerned this could deter ridership, and I think that a lot of the data has shown crime statistics going down on public transit, and worried about the economic impact of this legislation. Happy to answer your questions.
Questions for this witness? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony. Anybody else in opposition? Last chance. Hearing none. For informational purposes only. Hearing none, that'll conclude the hearing. Senator, do you have any closing remarks on Senate Bill 224?
I do not.
Great. Proceed with Senate Bill 225 when you're ready.
All right. Thank you again, Mr. Chair. I know we have a little less than an hour and a couple more bills to go, so I'm going to be very quick. This is Senate Bill 225. Again, for the record, Nick Schroer, St. Charles County, District 2. Senate Bill 225 is, again, a bill that we've seen quite a bit since my time up here. I started filing it in 2017, got it out of the House several different times, and it's morphed into what it is today. The two concepts in this bill are a sword and a shield approach dealing with businesses, business invitees in the Second Amendment. First, it's a shield protecting businesses that do allow lawful concealed carry card holders, anybody that's lawfully carrying their weapon into a business. So it's protecting these businesses that allow invitees to lawfully carry within their business for means of self-defense. Secondly, the sword is allowing businesses to continue their prohibition on firearms, allowing them or to elect gun-free zones within their business, but it would require them to protect their business invitees from harm that could come their way. It establishes a very strong, very stringent cause of action for anyone that is harmed that could show that but for that prohibition, they would have been able to protect themselves and ward off any harm or injury that they sustained while on the premises. So for those reasons, I will kindly ask you to support Senate Bill 225 and answer any questions.
Questions for the sponsor? Seeing none. Anybody here to testify in support of Senate Bill 225? Just a reminder, you have to fill out a witness form for each hearing or for each bill. Thank you. Proceed when you're ready. There you go. Yep.
Thank you, Chairman. Susan Myers of the 20th. Who am I to ask another to put their life at risk to protect mine? I am my own self-protector, my own first responder. As such, I carry concealed, as do many other women in this state. Our carry lifestyle isn't about being scared. It's about being prepared, and gun-free zones get in the way of that. Before an owner decides to make their business a posted gun-free zone, they need to give thoughtful consideration to the possible implications of that policy decision. It is a fallacy to assume that by just labeling yourself as gun-free will bring about any actual safety benefits. The majority of concealed carriers are content to go about it discreetly with no one the wiser, but someone with ill intent has no misgivings about illegally possessing, illegally concealing, and using a firearm in a gun-free zone to commit further crimes against the unarmed patrons, employees, and others. When a business owner is telling those entering to do so in a defenseless manner, then that owner should feel the weight of what it is they are asking of others. If I cannot protect myself, are they prepared to step in and do so? If not, then why would they want to put their customers and employees in such a vulnerable position in the first place? Because after all, we know that gun-free zones are easy targets, plain and simple.
Questions for this witness? Hearing none. Thank you for testimony. Further testimony and support.
Thank you again, Jenny Oliveira, District 28. And I'm just going to briefly state that, as my colleague has stated, those gun-free zones are a bullseye for the bad guy. And that's all I'm really going to say about it. She said everything that needs to be said. I'm just going to summarize in saying that I strongly agree and back this bill. That's all I have. Thank you.
Questions? Hearing none. Thank you. Any further testimony and support for Senate Bill 225?
Mr. Chairman, my name is William Bland. I live in Liberty, Missouri. I'm on the board of the Western Missouri Shooters Alliance. Is this my close? I'm on the board of the Western Missouri Shooters Alliance, and I'm representing myself and the alliance. And we're in support of this bill. Current law prevents a citizen from exercising their Second Amendment rights between their home and their work. And as I stated in previous testimony, concealed carry holders are among the most law-abiding of all citizens. They're not the problem. Law enforcement officers are 6 times more likely to commit a crime with a gun than a concealed carry holder. And I think the other points that I wanted to make have already been made. So that's all I have.
Questions for this witness? Hearing none. Thank you for testimony. Any further testimony in favor of Senate Bill 225?
Hello again. My name is Carl Smart, Vice President of Western Missouri Shooters Alliance. And I speak for myself and our organization, strongly in favor of this. Quite frankly, this is the first I've heard of it in the last 5 minutes, but it's something that we've discussed among ourselves for a long time. And I think it's no more than right that if you take the ability of someone to do something away from them, then don't you assume the liability for that? And I think that this bill is long overdue. Kudos, well done. I know there's a lot of belief that part of concealed carry is that we are gunslingers, and I keep hearing the story over and over again of the shootout in the OK Corral and blood running in the streets, and that just simply does not happen. Every time we've had a gun bill, we've had these promises, and nothing happens. So I think it's time that we simply gave people, the business owners, the protection that they need, and the customers the protection that they need. Thank you very much.
Questions for this witness? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony.
No questions? Oh, come on.
We're a quiet
Okay.
group, but we're thoughtful. Don't worry.
And here I was looking forward to a nice, friendly fight.
Any further testimony in support of Senate Bill 225? Any opposition to Senate Bill 225?
Good morning. Kara Corches on behalf of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry in opposition. I know we shared our concern with the sponsor's office as well. We view this bill as a new mandate on businesses. If they opt to disallow guns in their place of business, then they are subject to new requirements and also liability. So not only is our concern on any type of new mandate on businesses, but also the opportunity for massive lawsuits against businesses. And I understand that with this bill, it says, if you prohibit business or prohibit guns in the workplace, then you have to do all of these other steps. And in our view, that is a new mandate on business. And in our belief, with our free enterprise system, we think businesses should be able to set their workplace policies as they see fit. So for these reasons, we are in opposition, and I can take any questions you may have.
Questions for this witness? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony. Further opposition?
Mr. Chairman, Shannon Cooper today, representing the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce. We just want to go on record in opposition on behalf of our thousands of members. I'm sure we have members that allow this, and I'm sure we have members that don't, and our philosophy and position is that's a decision that should be made by the business that based on what they feel like is best for their employees and their customers. So therefore, we stand opposed to the bill. Be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for this witness? Hearing none, thank you for
Thank
your
you.
testimony. Further opposition? Testimony for informational purposes only. Hearing none, Senator, do you have any closing remarks? That'll conclude the hearing on Senate Bill 225. The next bill we'll take up is Senate Bill 319. Senator Eigel, you proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is State Senator Bill Eigel from the 23rd State Senatorial District. It's my pleasure to introduce Senate Bill 319. This act very simply reauthorizes the Joint Committee on Disaster Preparedness and Awareness, making it a permanent joint committee. This is a committee, Mr. Chairman, that I served on, and we dealt with many of the issues, everything from EMP threats to the state to natural disasters and how the state would react to those natural disasters and what planning goes into that. So the previous charter did expire. All this bill does is just make it a permanent standing or a permanent joint committee. And
Great.
with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the sponsor? Hearing none. Testimony in favor of Senate Bill 319.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Tom Dempsey, registered lobbyist for Catholic Charities, Archdiocese of St. Louis. We think this is a good policy to keep this in place and to help Missouri be prepared for the next disaster, which unfortunately will probably happen. So,
It just did. If it was on my phone, sorry about that.
yeah, no, that's okay. So we just would like to go on record in support.
Sorry, Tom, we will get training for our committee members on proper etiquette and while we're in public safety. Any questions for the witness? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony. Any further support for Senate Bill 319? Any further testimony for support? Any in opposition to Senate Bill 319? Any for informational purposes only? Hearing none. That'll conclude the hearing on Senate Bill 319. Thank you, Senator. Any concluding remarks? Senator Razer, you're up. Senate Bill 343. Proceed whenever you're prepared.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Senator Greg Razer from the 7th District in Kansas City, presenting Senate Bill 343, which is more commonly known as Blair's Law. It is very rare that we bring up a bill that deals with firearms and we generally agree, and I think this might be the only bill where we all tend to agree. This bill comes from a tragedy that happened in Kansas City where a young woman lost her life due to celebratory gunfire. The bill makes an offense of an unlawful discharge of a firearm if, with criminal negligence, he or she discharges a firearm within or into the limits of any municipality. I know Senator Schroer introduced this in the House. It has actually passed the House the last 3 years, I think, with pretty overwhelming votes. I could go on describing this, but I know Blair's parents are here, and their testimony is powerful, and I will let them talk about the importance of it.
Questions for the sponsor? Hearing none. Thank you for your testimony, Senator, or for bringing this bill before us. I know we've voted on it several times as House members, and a bill that's been important to a lot in the legislature. So thanks for bringing it. Testimony in support of Senate Bill 343. And proceed when you're ready.
I'm Michelle Shanahan DeMoss. Thank you for having or allowing me to be here again. I just looked, and we're 10 and a half years from the first time this bill was introduced, and I have been here quite a bit, and I was here last week. I'm going to just keep it short and simple. It's common sense, and the things that have held us up are nothing to do with the positivity of both sides agreeing that this should become law. So that is what I'm asking, is for that opportunity for it not to be held up, and the wait to be over for Blair's Law to become effective. And I'm happy to answer any questions, but I feel like I have been in front of everybody pretty much in this room for almost 12 years now.
Well, we've heard your story several times in my career, and I've voted on this bill several times as a House member, and just so sorry for what you've had to go through. I just can't fathom losing
I
a
appreciate
kid.
that, but really, to drive it home, the big thing to me is it's happened to me. I've endured it, and I have continued to persevere with the ability to raise awareness, but it's a misdemeanor. And what I went through on that side is unfathomable. And for the ability to prosecute a crime, for the ability of somebody to be able to pick up the phone, to identify, and to feel like something is going to be done is big. I mean, and there are so many people that have been hurt, property damage, and the list is crazy since Blair. And when it happened, I had no idea that it was even a thing. But I will continue to raise that awareness and continue to educate people of the responsibility of what happens when you pick that up. When you pick up a gun and fire it, you can kill somebody. It's not a toy. And to continue to do that, but to be able to prosecute the crime once it's done recklessly and irresponsibly, I need help with that part.
Yeah. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Questions, further questions? Go ahead, Senator.
Yeah, I just want to state again, thank you again for coming down. I first became aware of this in 2017 when former Democrat state representative brought this to my attention in the General Laws Committee. It's very common sense, and I think illustrating, I'm on the furthest right on this panel, sponsors on the furthest left. When you talk about policies that we stand for, it kind of represents that. We're very far apart on some, but on this one we agree. On this one it is common sense to not use this tool, misuse this tool in this way. I firmly believe, and I believe this ever since growing up in Ferguson, where my parents had to bring us in the basement. I've said this before, whenever there'd be a big event, 4th of July, New Year's, people would shoot guns in the air. The next day you'd see bullets rain down on houses, on cars. I've seen stories where people were injured. Your story hit home because I have 2 young daughters. And you know, doing nothing wrong and being victimized by somebody's stupidity needs to stop. So I fully support this bill again. I'm going to work with the sponsor and put this on as many pieces of legislation like I have in the past, and hopefully this is going to be the year.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
See no further questions. Thank you for your testimony. Anybody else here to testify in support of Senate Bill 343? Please, as a reminder, just fill out a witness form for our records. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you. Steve Young with the Kansas City Police Department. We always have been and remain in support of this bill. And unfortunately, I have to add that moments after the Chiefs secured the Super Bowl win, we actually had a sergeant struck in the arm by celebratory gunfire. So it's a huge problem with no stick to put it down.
Questions for the witness? Hearing none. Thank you, sir, for coming here to testify.
Thanks,
Further testimony in support of Senate Bill 343.
Mr. Chairman, Shannon Cooper today on behalf of the City of Kansas City and the Kansas City, Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce. We just want to go on record in support of this legislation. We appreciate both of you and your steadfast support. Hopefully we can get this done and put some teeth into this law to try and cut this back. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for this witness?
Thank you.
None. Thank you. Further in support.
Kara Korches on behalf of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry, also in support, essentially what the first witness said about how a lot of times these bullets then cause property damage. We hear countless stories of businesses that end up with bullet holes in their windows because of events like this. So for these reasons, we are in support and happy to take any questions you may have.
Questions? Hearing none. Thank you for testimony. Further testimony in support.
Good morning again. Thank you. I'm Jenny Oliveira from District 28. I'm a mother of 3 and a concealed carrier. Celebratory gunfire breaks a cardinal rule that concealed carriers hold near and dear. Don't point your weapon at something you do not intend to destroy. What goes up must come down, and the large area in which a bullet comes down along with its velocity makes the aiming of a weapon to the sky unacceptable, uncontrollable, and irresponsible. Celebratory gunfire creates a public safety issue that in turn creates a negative connotation for law-abiding concealed carriers doing our part to protect, not destroy. Blair's Law is a necessity to further protect the innocent lives around us. Thank you.
Thank you for testimony. Questions? Hearing none. Further testimony in support.
Actually, getting up and down and coming up here is almost smacking on the edge of exercise. This time I'm speaking, my name again is Carl Smart, and this time I'm speaking on my own behalf. One of the things I've done for the last 22 years is a small arms instructor with the 4-H program, the 22 rifle program. And that program, I've always emphasized, it has 3 principles: safety, responsibility, and gun stuff. And it's in that order. One of the things that I have pointed out to the kids is the range on a 22 long rifle is a mile to a mile and a half, pointed at 45 degrees, pull the trigger, and everybody in that range is in danger. You have to be responsible. The people who are shooting celebratory gunfire are an anathema to all good, responsible gun owners. And I want to basically take the opportunity to publicly reap scorn on them. I support this bill. They should not only get scorned, but they ought to get pounded real good. Thank you very much. Party
Questions
on.
for this witness? Hearing none, thank you, sir, for your testimony. Further testimony in support, Senate Bill 343.
Thank you, Chairman. Susan Myers of the 20th. As someone who advocates volunteers in leadership roles with organizations involving women in firearms, one that advocates for our Second Amendment rights, and the other that trains and teaches women how to safely own and carry a firearm. When I learned from Representative Sharp that celebratory gunfire was even a thing, the first thing I said was, if someone did that at an outdoor range, they would be escorted off the premises and banned for life. I'm so glad I was able to be here today to finally, on the record, speak in support of this bill. And given that, from what I take, this is can be a family tradition thing and stuff like that, I'm glad that the first offense is a misdemeanor to maybe start getting the word out there that this is not the right thing to do. Some people start getting hit with that. Maybe the message will finally get driven home. So I'm fully in support.
Thank you for testimony. Questions? Hearing none. Anybody else here to testify in favor of Senate Bill 343? Anybody for opposition? Anybody for informational purposes only? That'll conclude the hearing on Senate Bill 343. Any concluding thoughts, Senator?
Just very quickly, Mr. Chairman, it's so insignificant compared to the loss of life, but I personally have multiple property damage to my home because of celebratory gunfire. And just reiterate, there are virtually no other bills that deal with firearms that we all agree on, and it would just be nice to get this done and come together.
Well, as long as you can get the votes, it'll get out of this committee pretty quick. So we'll work on that. That's what we can control at this moment. So that'll conclude the hearing on Senate Bill 343. And that'll conclude the hearing on transportation, infrastructure, and public safety. Second. We got a second, so we're done.